Let's see. Okay. Thank you all so much for coming. It's going to be a great time while we discuss crucial topics that are applicable to the lives of young people. And yeah, I'm looking forward to getting to hear Kimberly and Doug talk. So let's bow our heads in prayer. Father, I want to thank you for the opportunity you've given us to gather in your presence this Saturday. We thank you for the amazing experts you've brought into our presence. We thank you for the information they're about to share with us. We thank you for the impartation of knowledge, for opening our eyes to see the options that are available before us. We thank you because you are using this program to improve our lives, to improve our standings here in this community, in the mighty name of Jesus. Lord, we ask that anything that will be an hindrance to our hearing, to our understanding of the message you have for us this evening, Lord, you take it away from our presence. We ask that you enable us to gain the true message you have carved out for us this evening, and we ask that at the end of it all, we shall give all glory to your name. Thank you, everlasting Father. Be thou exalted in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I'm so delighted. Today is a special day, and this is our first edition of this program. And I would like to welcome each and every one of you, and most importantly, our guests that they are going to impart us, give us some information that will help us to take some major decisions. So thank you, everyone. So, but before I will do the introduction, I would like to read some Bible verses. And the theme for this event is Arise, Shine. Arise, Shine. So I'm going to read the book of Isaiah 60, 1-3. I read from New Living Translation. Arise, Jerusalem. Let your light shine for all to see, for the glory of the Lord rises to shine on you. Darkness as black as night cover all the nations of the earth, but the glory of the Lord rises and appear over you. All nations will come to your light. Mighty kings will come to see your radiance. Praise the Lord. Now, the Bible verse I just read now is not just a command. It's a message from God. It's also a prophecy as well. For someone to shine, one must rise. If you don't rise, it is inevitable to shine. And to shine and to rise, there's a provision available, which is the prophecy of the Lord that the light of the Lord will come upon us. So it is expected that in every area of our life, we must shine. In our walk with God, we must rise, we must shine, to let the people of the world see that we are true sons and daughters of our God. And when you hear the word arise, shine, it means get up. It's a force. It means rise up. It means stand up. Don't sit down. Do something. Make a move. Be responsible. Take actions. Don't be idle, because the world is waiting for us to manifest the glory of the Lord. And like I said, it's a prophecy as well. When you rise and you shine, the provision is there for us to enjoy as well. In verse 3, it was telling us that even the whole wide world is covered in darkness, and people are covered. But the word of the Lord is telling us that because we arise and we shine, we will be singled out, because the light of the Lord will come upon us. Praise the Lord. So, in this view, I would like to introduce our guest speaker. First and foremost, I have a seasoned orator. She is phenomenal. She is a wife. She's a mom. She's a former Marine. And she is also a licensed orator. She is married. And from what I gather, they are blessed with 5 beautiful children. Right? 11. See? Thank you. Wow. Please, a round of applause. She has over 10 years of experience in logistic function, administrative support, contract writing, and 3 years of experience in management and training. Her educational career started in Rayton Senior High School. She got high diploma in general study from 1993 to 2003. She also a Marine Corps from university certificate from and logistic from 2003. In 2003, she also have Concord Career College Associates Respiratory Therapy from 2009 to 2010. She got a bachelor degree in business administration and management from 2013 to 2016 from Clary University. She also got a bachelor of business administration from ECPI University from 2016 to 2018. She got some experiences. She got a large portfolio. Like I said, she was a former logistic management specialist at U.S. Marine Corps from June 2003 to June 2007. She is also a former cargo specialist at National Guard 2010 to 2012. She is also a former senior representative at Riker Corporation from 2013 to 2015 in Kalamazoo, Michigan here. And she is also a former veteran service officer at Veteran of Foreign Wars, VFW, from March 2019 to 2021. She is also a former editor and salesperson at Team Martel Realty Incorporation from 2016 to 2023. And currently, she is a editor and salesperson at Arlington Tim Keller Williams Realty from 2023 until present date. Some of our favorite quotes is, know what you believe, because what you believe determines what you do. Praise the Lord. Amen. So, please, let's welcome Kabrena Williams. And she also came with her husband, Mr. Devon. Thank you.
So I can speak for just like 2 seconds if you want, and then you can invite him, because I see you have his cool experience here too.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. This is so exciting. Thank you so very much for having us out here today. I'm going to try my best to rise to the occasion here and really help you guys to better understand what home ownership is like in that process, okay? So first I want to start off with the street cred. I know Kolawole was able to go through that quite a bit with you guys. So thank you so much for that. As you can see, again, there was more than 8 years of experience in real estate. So it's been a fun time. My first thing I want to say, thank you for coming. Genuinely thank you for coming and having the questions that we've had, because I know some of them have been really, really good so far. We do intend to touch on a lot of those questions that you guys have here tonight. As this process goes on, if you guys do have questions, please write them down so you do not forget, so we can answer them at the end of this if there's something that we have not touched on, okay? Now I want to say, moving right along, the first process when you start realizing you want to buy a home is to actually find an agent who you want to talk to, ask these questions that you're going to have. And in this process is when that real estate professional should kind of help you guys understand what this process is, right? Buying a home on TV looks like so much fun. But in real life, there's a lot of bit moving pieces to buying a home. So this is the point where you want to talk to a real estate agent, figure out what realtor you would like to work with, because that person is genuinely going to be monumental in the process of purchasing your home, your flip, your rental, whatever it is that you guys intend to purchase, okay? So the next big step after that is actually finding the lender. The lender is probably more important, to be honest with you, than finding the realtor. The right lender can make or break your situation. That person, for me, one of my favorites is Jeremy Drobeck. That's the reason he is here today, because he makes this process so seamless. So without further ado, I would like to have Kola, if that's okay. Give your cool spiel on Mr. Jeremy here, and then have him come up, please. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you once again, everyone. So I'm going to invite the next person, but before that, I would like to do some of his introduction, to read his profile to us. So his name is Jeremy Drobeck. He's a mortgage advisor, which is Redstone Funding. He helped homeowner obtain a mortgage that meets their needs. Having worked in real estate industry since 2000, Jeremy is experienced in helping hundreds of people purchase new homes as part of realtor. He himself, he knows both sides of the business and inside and out. Jeremy offers a wide range of programs and services, from the first-time home buyer program to construction loan and investment property mortgage. Jeremy is a leader in this industry. So his educational career started in Lansing Community College Aviation in 1997 to 1999. He also attended private pilot. He also attended Federal Aviation Administration in 1997 as a private pilot. He got a license as well. He attended Western Michigan University, BA Aviation Administration in 2004. So, part of his experience is a machine gunner, United States Marine Corps, 1997 to 2000, for over 3 years. He has worked with Century 21st Advanced Realty as a realtor in year 2020 to 2022 to year 2002, excuse me. He's also a realtor at ERA Network Real Estates in February 2002 to 2003 for over a year. He was a former branch manager, asset mortgage and financial, and in June 2002 to March 2004. He was also a former mortgage loan originator, CTX Mortgage, from June 2004 to 2007. He's also a mortgage loan originator from PHH Mortgage from August 2007 to 2008 here in Kalamazoo. He was also a former branch manager at First Metropolitan Mortgage in 2008 to 2000, the same year, here in Kalamazoo as well. He's also a former mortgage loan originator as well at Amery First Home Mortgage. I worked there full-time from 2009 to 2022. And currently, is a mortgage loan officer at Redstone Funding from December 2022 until this present moment. Please, let's welcome Jeremy Drobeck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You make me feel really old. Can you guys hear me okay without the microphone? I have a loud voice. All right. So yeah, I'm Jeremy Drobeck. So, and I've been doing mortgages for a long time, as you just heard there. So, let's pass these out so that these are just some handouts. If you want to pass those around. And yeah, so what I want to talk about here is, a lot of times the biggest challenge with, a lot of people want to purchase a house, but houses cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? And so the realtor is absolutely instrumental. We need our realtors, like, hands down, to help find those houses and negotiate the transactions and get everything worked out and coordinate all the different people involved with this. But you need the money at the end of the day. You gotta have the money to purchase the home, and that's where I come in. I'm the money guy. One of the things that I think is, I always like to talk about when I get in front of a group of people that want to own a home, or maybe already do and are thinking of purchasing another home, is just talk a little bit about the financial side of why home ownership is so important. And what that, when it comes down to home ownership, I'm going to see if they can you guys get a couple of those slides up for me? With home ownership, it's a lot about building wealth. The majority of millionaires in our country are millionaires because of home ownership. A lot of the wealth that's been built in the United States is because of home ownership. And what I like to show people is that we're in a market right now where we've seen prices on homes go up quite a bit over the last couple of years. And there's been a few years where home values went down, but generally speaking, they go up in value. And I have a slide that will get pulled up here in just a second that'll show you this. But if you look at, hit a couple more slides through there. Oh, they're getting it. So I'll keep talking here. Here's the thing with homes. So let's just take a really simple example. So let's say you buy a $100,000 house and you put $5,000 down on that home. That home will go up in value roughly 5% a year. So each year that home will go up in value roughly $5,000 a year. So you invest $5,000 to purchase the home. The next year the house is worth $5,000 more. The next year it's worth $10,000 more, and then $15,000 more. So that $5,000, fast forward 10 years down the road, that house is now worth $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 more, and that $5,000 that you put down essentially grew into what amounts to typically hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I know you guys can't see those. I can here. So that because of that, that's why I've been doing this so long. I've seen customers that started out at a very young age purchasing a home, and now here I've been doing this for 24 years, and they're now selling their second or third house, and they're selling their home, and they're able to take the money they make from the sale of that house and then put $100,000, $150,000 down on the next house, and the cycle just continues on. So when we can make generational changes for people when we help families purchase homes because of this appreciation that they get out of them. And there's a lot of different programs out there. You don't have to have a lot of money to purchase a home. A lot of people think that you have to have $5,000 down to purchase a home, and we have lots of different programs where you can purchase with very little down. So let's run through some of that. I see these guys struggling back there. Can you click me through like one more, at least on this screen here? One more. Let's go one more. One more. Since they can't see that, we'll skip that. Okay, let's go over this. So there's three things we look at when somebody comes. So here's how this normally works for people. So they go and they see a house on the internet, right? Most people look at houses on the internet. So who's looked at a house on Zillow before? Right? Everybody has, right? That's where we all go and we see a house. We're like, oh, we like that house. And Zillow says, click here to see the house. And you click it and it ends up connecting you with a real estate agent. And the first thing the realtor says to you, are you pre-approved? I can't show you the house unless you're pre-approved. Am I right? So, and that realtor will then say, okay, here, call Jeremy, call this lender and get pre-approved. And that's where I come in. Because you got to have the money, right? You got to know how much money do I need to put down to purchase the home? What's my monthly payment going to be, right? We all have different budgets, different payments we're comfortable with. And that's what I'll help you figure out. So you'll get in touch with me, and what I'm going to ask you a bunch of different questions. Where do you work? How much do you make? We're going to run credit. We're going to look at all this different stuff and figure out how much, figure out all those options that you have. So there's three main things that we look at. So number one is income. So we're going to look at how much money you're making. The income is what determines, for the most part, how much house you qualify for. So if you make $5,000 a month, you're going to qualify for one amount. If you make $10,000 a month, you're going to qualify for more, right? And so I'm using very simple numbers, but that's the income determines how much you qualify for. The other thing that comes into play there is credit. And we're gonna talk about credit, but credit's another important piece of the puzzle. That's your ability to repay. Are you gonna, do you pay your bills on time? And the credit side of it plays in there. And then lastly, down payment and collateral is what we call it. And so that's either down payment or the house itself, if there's equity in the house. So credit's always a big concern, so I want to spend a little bit of time talking about credit here. And you guys click through again on the slide? Okay. I know you guys can't see that, but, oh, no, go back for me. Okay, so with credit, there's the main piece of credit. So what we do is we run credit scores, right? So we type your information into the computer, we hit a button, and it tells us this magic credit score number. And that credit score, 35% of what that credit score is based on is your payment history on other bills that you have. So car loans, credit cards, things like that. If you paid those on time, 35% of that score, what's made up on that score is, did you pay those things on time? A lot of people don't have a credit score. We can work with people that don't have credit scores. If you don't have a credit score, then I have to verify that you've been paying 3 things on time for 1 year. So that could be something like a cell phone bill. Cell phones don't report to the credit bureaus. Cell phone, rent, Netflix, Hulu, Apple Music, a gas bill, an electric bill, a cable bill, an internet bill. If you have 3 things that you've been paying on time for 1 year, we can verify that you've been paying those 3 things on time for 1 year, and we can do the loan even if somebody doesn't have a credit score. So there are ways. You don't have to have a credit score to buy a house. So credit payment history is, I can't stress that enough, is the most important part of a credit score. The next thing that plays into that credit score, 30% of what it's made up of, so 35% is, did you pay it on time? 30% of it is the utilization is what it's called, but that is say you have a credit card, if the limit on the credit card versus how much you owe on the credit card. So if the credit card is maxed out or it's over the limit, say you have a $1,000 limit on the credit card and you owe $900. That's very close to the max. That negatively affects your score. If you owe $1,200 on the credit card and the limit's $1,000, then that means you swiped that credit card one too many times, right? And you went over the limit. That's a big blemish on the credit. What I'll do when that happens and somebody's credit scores is a little weaker, I'll have them pay the credit card balance down and the score will go up. So there's ways we can help people adjust the credit score up relatively easily as well. The sweet spot with that utilization is you want 30% or less owed on the credit card. So again, simple numbers that I can do in my head. If you owe $1,000, or if the limit's $1,000, you want to keep the balance under $300. So 30%. So credit is, if any of you are concerned about credit, just call me. I'll help you figure it out. That's what we do. I don't expect anybody in here to be an expert on credit. That's my job. So we work with buyers all the time to help them get their credit straight, to get their credit up. I want to go back to income here real quick. So on the income side, there's a lot of misconceptions out there when it comes to financing. So I hear a lot of times like, well, I haven't been on my job for 2 years. That's probably the most common one. People think they need to be on the job for 2 years. That is not true. That is not true at all. So we can take somebody that just started a job. We can take a loan for somebody that just moved here, say from Florida, and they took a new job, say at Pfizer, as an example. We can get a letter from Pfizer that says how much they're going to make, and we can use that even though they haven't started the job yet. So the 2-year job 2 years on the job is a total myth. We do need to show that people have been working consistently. So you have to prove that you've had a 2-year work history, but it does not have to be at the same job. So it's the concern there is, or the reason for that is that they don't want somebody getting a job and then just to buy a house and then quitting the job and not being able to make the payment. So you got to have some work history, but it doesn't all have to be at the same job. Does that make sense? Okay. And then down payment was the other kind of item there, and I'm gonna show you guys down payment when we get into some of these loan programs. So, all right, can you guys flip another slide back there, please, for me? All right, well, let's do one more. Okay, so I talked about employment, so one more. Okay, so let's talk about this one here. So this, I know you guys can't see this. Some of this is covered in the handouts I gave you, and I'll walk you through it. If you call me, we'll talk about your individual situation and all the specifics on it. When it comes to down payment, there's a number of different sources. So I'm going to show you some loan programs that really don't need any money down or very, very little. But down payment can come from multiple areas. So sometimes people are selling a house and it comes from the sale of a house. It can be a gift. There's assistance programs out there for the down payment. It can just be your cold, hard cash that you've saved up over the years. But down payment can come in many, many forms. And a lot of times we were doing loans where we don't need any down payment at all. So it's good to have down payment money, but it's certainly not a requirement. One more slide there, please. Okay, so let's talk about FHA loans. So I want to show you some of the programs that are out there. And FHA is one of the very common programs that's out there. It's a government-backed loan program. It's very lenient on credit. So when we talk about credit scores range from, say, 400 up to 800. So when somebody says, I have a 600 credit score, or I have a 700 credit score, or a 680 credit score, that's what they're talking about. With FHA, we can do financing down to a 550 credit score, which is pretty low on the scale. So FHA is very lenient on credit. FHA requires 3.5% down. So I like to give examples on numbers I can do in my head. So a $100,000 house, 3.5% down would be $3,500. So when we're talking FHA, it's 3.5% of the price is what we need for down payment. Again, very easy on credit qualifying. There's a program, I was asked earlier about foreclosures. So one of the types of foreclosures that are out there, they're called HUD homes. They're FHA foreclosures. And those homes we can finance with $100 down. So we only need $100 down in those foreclosures. And those are, again, FHA foreclosures. There's also some down payment assistance available for the FHA program, which I'll talk about in just a second. And FHA is a little bit more lenient. When we look at like the debt versus the income, FHA is a little more flexible, where we can typically stretch people up a little bit higher on what they qualify for. All right, let's go with that next slide. Okay, so then we get into conventional loans. Now, conventional loans are, that's like, I like to call the conventional loan the normal loan. So if you call up a typical bank or credit union, usually they're talking about conventional loans. We offer conventional loans. We do a lot of conventional loans. But your conventional loan is a little bit tighter on the credit side of things. So like the minimum credit score for conventional is 620. Where that FHA was 550, conventional you got to have a little bit better credit. Conventional we can do with as little as 3% down, but generally speaking, for the conventional side of it, like you got to do like a 3% down, you'd have to have more like a 700 credit score. So where that FHA is 3.5% down with a much lower score. So a lot of times for first-time home buyers, we're doing FHAs. But conventional's done typically more on the move-up buyer. It's it's your next house, right? So you buy your first one with very little out of pocket, and then like I was explaining earlier on, you live there for 5 or 6 years, and then you go sell that house, and you make $50,000 when you sell the house, and then you put the $50,000 down. That's typically when we're doing conventional. It's that move-up buyer is what we call them. Does that make sense? There's also down payment assistance available for the conventional. We'll talk about that a little bit. What the advantage to the conventional financing is when it comes to the appraisal. So we're going to talk a little bit about finding a house and what happens when you find a house, but ultimately you'll find a house, and then we as the lender, we order an appraisal. Now when the appraiser goes through the property, the appraiser's there to make sure that the house is worth what you're purchasing it for. So if you're buying the home for $200,000, we want to make sure it's worth $200,000. So we bring in this third-party person, and they do an independent value estimate on the house, and we're looking for that value to line up with whatever it is the buyer's paying for it. When that appraiser goes through the home, if they feel there's any health or safety issues, they can require them to be repaired. So a health or safety issue would be like a tarp on the roof, water in the basement. Who was asking me about foreclosures earlier? So the problem with foreclosures, right, is a lot of times they're in rough shape, right? They have a tarp on the roof, they have water in the basement, like they need some work. And so that's where those appraisers can flag those different items. And with the conventional loan, they're more lenient on the repairs than the FHA loan. So the FHA loan is the government-backed loan. Our government always wants to look out for everybody, so they have more restrictions on the condition of the property. So like if there's peeling paint, for example, back in the day, like back before, back in the 60s and the 50s and stuff like that, when the paint they painted houses with had lead in it. And nowadays we know that if you eat the lead paint, you get lead poisoning, you get sick. And so FHA requires any peeling paint be fixed, where with the conventional loan we don't have to worry about that kind of thing. So there are some advantages to conventional in that they're not as picky on the house. Does that make sense? All right, can you throw me the next slide there? All right, I'm gonna go back to the repair stuff, and we're gonna talk a little more about that in just a second. But another program that's out there is called the Rural Development. Rural Development is another government-backed program, and it's zero down. You don't need any down payment. Now the catch, there's always a catch, right? And the catch with rural development is there's area restrictions. So rural development won't lend in the city of Kalamazoo or the city of Portage. but they will lend pretty much everywhere else around here. So everything north of G Avenue, you guys know where G is? Everything north of G, which we're north of G right now, right? So we're actually in a rural development area right here where we're sitting. So it's not, it doesn't have to be out in the middle of nowhere. This program is fairly lenient, but no city of Kalamazoo, no Portage. So everywhere else is, everywhere in between Kalamazoo and Grand Rapids is okay. Everywhere between Kalamazoo and Battle Creek is okay. Everywhere between Kalamazoo and the Lake Shore is okay until you get to St. Joe. And everywhere south of Portage all the way to the state line is eligible for rural development. Even like Three Rivers is eligible for rural development. That's a bigger town. But the RD program, the Rural Development Program, is a really cool zero down program that we can do. All right, next slide there. All right, so VA loans. Do I have anybody that served in the military in the room besides these two? Just so you know, if you know anybody that served in the military, there's a very, very good financing program for veterans that's a no money down program. Super advantageous. There's no PMI on it. It's a very, very good program. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but it's a very good program. Okay, next slide. All right, so let's get a little bit more into repairs. And how do we finance the foreclosures you were asking about? What do we do when there's health and safety issues? Because the fact of the matter is right now, the homes under 200,000 typically need a little bit of love. And I know you guys can't see some of the pictures that I bought. If you can turn your head towards that screen there, you'll see an example of a house that I financed that was just totally in disarray. Can you guys play that video that's on that PowerPoint right there? Can you click on it? It should be playable. No? They're shaking their hands at me. I think that's a no. So, if you see that picture on the right, a customer of mine sent that to me. That is, a couple of years ago, there was a whole bunch of flooding in Texas Township. And that is a hole in the foundation in the basement. And that water coming through that hole was like a drinking fountain. And it was coming through nonstop all day, day in and day out. And there was a drain in the basement, so the water would drain back out. But there was about 2 inches of water in this basement all the time. Now that is a health and safety issue, right? Like, we don't swim in our basements, right? Like, so what we did on that, nobody would finance that house because, right? Would you ever imagine you'd walk in that house as a realtor and you'd be like, "Come on, we're out of here." Don't ever do that. You tell them, "Call Jeremy, he'll get it worked out for you." So what we did was we had the buyer get a bid from a water basement proofing company. And we financed it into the loan. So it cost about $12,000 to get this problem fixed. And they dug up around the foundation and did their water basement proofing. We financed that into the loan. At the same time, the picture on the left there, they redid the kitchen at the same time. They were like, well, if we're going to do the renovation loan anyways, and we're going to work with a contractor anyways, we might as well redo the kitchen at the same time. So they got some new countertops, some new cabinets, some appliances, some flooring in the kitchen there. All right, next one. So this program is this renovation program is most commonly referred to as an FHA 203K renovation loan. I know that's a mouthful. Just think renovation loan. And here's kind of how it works. So let's just say, again, I'm going to use very simple numbers that I can do in my head. Let's say you have a $150,000 house, and you go through the house and you're like, oh, this house just isn't right. I don't like the shag carpet, the kitchen's outdated, it's got a tarp on the roof, it's got water in the basement, it needs new windows, it needs a new furnace, whatever it is it needs. What we'll do is we'll have you get a bid from a contractor to fix that house up. So I even did one, I'll give you one more example. So I did one last year, or 2 years ago now, that was in the city of Kalamazoo, and the people were doing drugs in the house. And the cops raided this house. The city then condemned it because of the drug use, and then the owner let it go into foreclosure. So it was this foreclosure sitting there that was this condemned house. And again, same thing, we had the buyer get a bid to take care of the problems with the house, and we financed it into the loan. So you find a $150,000 house, you meet with your contractor, they do a bid to fix it up. Whatever we have to do and whatever you want to do. So like the house with the water in the basement, they had to fix the water issue, they wanted to fix the kitchen. So they get the bid, let's just say the bid's $50,000. We take the $150,000 price plus the $50,000 bid, add them together, you're at $200,000, and then we need 3.5% down on the $200,000. So in that example, the buyer would have to do $7,000 down. We then close. When we close, that is where you get the keys to the house. You can move in there at that point if you want to. If you want to wait because there's a foot of water in the basement, you can wait, it's up to you. But we close. Now you own the home. We give the contractor half the money. So in that example I'm doing, the bid was $50,000. So we give the contractor $25,000. He goes in there, does the work. We re-inspect the property, make sure it's all done, and then we pay the contractor the other half. And you have a totally fixed up house. Does that make sense? That's how you do foreclosures that are in really bad shape. So I often hear or get asked like, well, I was told I couldn't finance this house, or this house is cash only, or it's conventional only. And a lot of times that's because of repair stuff. And we're able to get around a lot of that and get a lot more sales done and help a lot more people out every year because we're able to do these renovation loans. All right, next up on the slides there. You can keep going. Okay, so now I want to talk about some down payment assistance that's out there. So there's a program through the state of Michigan called MISHDA. And what MISHDA is the state gives us $10,000 to play with. And again, I'm going to use some simple numbers, okay? Everybody good with my simple numbers? So we have a $100,000 house. I told you a little bit ago I need $3,500 down on that house, right? If we utilize the state down payment assistance program, we have $10,000 to work with. In order to access the $10,000, the state requires that the buyer do 1% of the price. So $100,000 house, 1% is $1,000. So I need $3,500 down. The buyer's going to do $1,000. And then we're going to reach into this $10,000 bucket of money with the state of Michigan, and we're going to get the other $2,500 from the state of Michigan. That then meets our down payment requirement. That leaves us $7,500 in that bucket of money with the state, and we'll use that remaining $7,500 to cover the closing costs, which really helps in our competitive market that we're in, because then you don't have to have your realtor negotiate that the seller pay the closing costs for you. The other really cool thing about that program is the state subsidizes the rate, the interest rate a little bit, so that rate is typically it's typically about 0.5% below what the normal market is at. So it helps on the payments, it helps on the down payment, and it's an all-around good program. That $10,000, just so we're clear, is not free money. It's an interest-free loan. So you don't make any payments on it. You don't pay any interest on it. But someday when you sell that house, the state gets paid back. So go back to my example, right? You buy the house for $100,000. 5 years later, you call up your realtor. She throws your house on the market. You sell it. You sell it for $150,000 because it's gone up in value. You make $50,000, or you get $150,000 for it. Whatever you owe on the main mortgage gets paid off. So by then you'll probably owe, say, $90,000, and plus the $10,000 to the state. So we're back to $100,000. So you put $50,000 in your pocket, and then you're buying another house, and we use that $50,000 for down payment on that loan. So that state program is a really, really, really good way right now in the market we're in to just all around help with the affordability of the house and the down payment side of things. Does that make sense? All right. Okay, so you can hit the next slide there. There are some other down payment assistance programs in the area. KNHS is an organization in town that does that administers some grants. There's some grants through for City of Kalamazoo employees. One of the hospitals had some grant money, and there's another grant out there that's a needs-based grant that does like up to $8,000. So there are other programs. I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty on each one of those. But if we, if one of those programs makes sense, we're certainly suggesting it to the buyer that we're working with. So, all right, next slide. Do I have anybody here that currently owns a home? You do? Okay. So there's another. So one of the concerns that people have sometimes is, how do I move to my next house? Like, how do I coordinate that logistically? And there's a couple different ways you can do it. The challenging thing, like what used to be done in our market, is you'd go find the next house you want to buy and you'd put an offer in on it, and you would make it contingent on the sale of your current house. So you would say to that seller that you want to purchase from, you say, hey seller, I'll give you $200,000 for this house, but I need you to give me 2 or 3 weeks to sell my current home. And the seller will say, okay, yeah, sounds good. I'll give you 2 weeks to sell your house, and then you put your house on the market, and you get a buyer for it, and then we close them at the same time. That's like the ideal way that it works. The tricky thing in today's world is there's not a lot of houses for sale. We have a shortage of inventory right now. So there's definitely houses out there, but there's not as many as there were 5 or 6 years ago. And because it's competitive out there, a lot of times you're putting an offer on this house and 3 other people are also putting an offer in on the house. Did you lose out on any homes when you bought yours? No? All right. So when a seller gets this offer that's contingent, if they have somebody else that's putting an offer on the house that's not contingent, they're probably going to take that other offer. They're not going to take your offer because they don't want to have to wait for you to sell your house. So we have a program we wanted to figure out a way at Treadstone to kind of fix that problem and solve that problem for buyers. So we came up with this thing called a bridge loan. And what the bridge loan does is it's a loan that we do on your current home. And we'll do, again, let's use some simple numbers. Let's say you have a $200,000 house, and let's say you owe $100,000. We could do a bridge loan and up to 70% of whatever your home's worth. And so in this example, about $30,000. And we take a bridge loan on your current home for $30,000. We'd go close on the new home that you're buying. We'd use that $30,000 for down payment on the one you're buying, and then when you sell your old home, that bridge loan gets paid off, and then you get what's left. So I know that's complicated. If you're in that scenario, call me, but just know my point in sharing that with you is that there are solutions to some of these other issues that are out there for people. All right, next slide. So let's talk real quickly a little bit about, if you call me up and say, hey, I want a mortgage, what am I going to ask you? I'm going to ask you where you work, how much you make, I'm going to run your credit, I'm going to need some documents from you. I got to prove everything. Nobody trusts me anymore, right? So I got to prove it, right? I got to prove it to the underwriters and the powers that be. So I'm going to be asking you for pay stubs, W-2s, bank statements, copies of your driver's license. We're going to have to document all this stuff. So just know that we'll be asking you for stuff. It's not because I want to have to make you chase a bunch of paper down, but we do have to verify a lot of that. All right, next slide. I'm going to turn it back over to you here in a second. You lost me there. that does pretty much wrap up the programs and stuff. So why don't we get back into, so you got the money, you got my pre-approval letter now. So you call me, I check all your stuff, we go over all these options, I share with you what the payment scenarios would be and how much you need down and stuff, and we figure that all out, and then I give you a pre-approval letter, and that's your ticket to shop for a house. Now your realtor comes in, and what do?
All right. Now that we have the pre-approval, here's the fun stuff, right? This is the part where everybody want to get to. You know, you looked at houses on Zillow before you even called me. You looked on Reddit, all the other places. Where do I go? What do I do? So now you've got your realtor. Now you've got your amazing lender and your pre-approval. So you know exactly how much house you can afford to buy, right? So the next step is we go into that home buying search for homes, right? So no matter whether that's a duplex, no matter if that's your first time home, whatever it is that you're looking for, this next step is where we really hone in on that. So 4 bedrooms, 2 bath, whatever it is you're looking for, I set up a subscription, which is an email that'll come to you guys. Every single morning when you wake up, there'll be an email in your inbox. Hey, I have looked at homes for you. These particular homes that have your desired characteristics, all the things that we talked about and I honed in on, those homes will start coming to you guys regularly. So once you have that house that you're like, oh my goodness, this one looks nice, I can do this, right? That's when you call me and we set up a time to go and see that home. Once we see it, I'm going to do my due diligence. I'm going to walk around. You're looking at cabinets and countertops, and I'm looking for all the things that make me say, huh. So that way we can make sure that you're actually getting to something you guys actually want to be in. So once we have that home that gives you butterflies and you're so excited you want to move forward, we go to the very, very next step after that, which is where I go into making sure you understand everything there is to know about that home, right? So I'll do what's called a market analysis, where I take a look at all the houses that I've sold in that area to make sure that you're paying the right price. Make sure that, we know exactly how much negotiation power we have as far as what other houses have sold in that neighborhood recently, to make sure that you're paying the best price. Because that's part of the reason why you get a realtor, is not only to make sure that all your documents are done right and correctly and in a timely manner, but you're also making sure that you don't get taken to the cleaners. Because it's very easy to do that when you don't have proper representation. So after we've found the one, we've talked about the numbers and what we should actually offer, we'll go ahead and put that offer in. That's where the negotiations get fun. Cole can tell you all about that part. When we purchased his home a few months ago, it was a lot of fun. I was telling one of your counterparts earlier too, for me, as a real estate agent, I really kind of make this personal. Anytime you work with your family, your friends, obviously you put your heart and soul into it because you care about that person, right? So every time a buyer comes to me and says, hey, listen, this is what I need, I look at them, I take that as a personal relationship, that you are now my brother, my sister, because at that point, I have to make my brother or sister happy. And so I'm going to do the best that I can to negotiate whatever terms you need for that home. So that's the next fun part, is the negotiations. After that, we'll do some of the other fun part that Jeremy talked about as well, as far as making sure that the home is inspected. Even if it's a new build home, I can't tell you how many times my new builds have been a lot of fun. On those inspections, the craziest things come up sometimes. So I always suggest to have a home inspection. At that point, we will then decipher everything that's on that list so you can make sense of what actually needs to be done. After that is completed, if we need to negotiate again, because that's also one of my favorite things to do, obviously, is negotiate. I will, if needed, after the inspections, if there's anything that needs to be repaired, fixed, whatever, we can negotiate or renegotiate our terms, and or have the seller try to repair some of those terms. After that is normally when the appraisal happens, as Jeremy, kind of hit on that. When the bank wants to make sure that what you're buying is actually worth the amount you're looking to spend on it, right? After that appraisal comes back, and if we're all good to go, The next step is making sure that our T's are crossed and our I's are dotted, making sure those documents are good to go and ready. We'll do a final walkthrough as well. That's when you guys will walk through the home for the last time before you actually get the keys, to make sure that there's no hidden surprises. At times, sellers get a little overzealous and will take curtains or refrigerator when they're supposed to leave it for you guys. So that is the time frame that we will go and ensure that what you're buying is actually what you want, right? Once that final walkthrough happens, typically 24 to 48 hours later, we're closing. Closing is, like Jeremy said a little while ago, that is the moment where you actually get the keys and now the house is yours. And that literally is the home buying process. So I was asked earlier, and I want to touch on this really quickly, why would anyone in today's age get a real estate agent? So I want to cover that. While we have talked about all of this fun stuff, all the fluff of home buying, right? There's a lot to this. Just like any other industry, you can go on YouTube and learn as much as you can and try to start doing things on your own. That is great. But I will tell you guys this. Throughout this process, there's so many little things that can come up. And when you have a real estate agent who is seasoned, who is licensed, who is doing everything to the best of their ability to make sure that everything goes smoothly, you then get to sleep at night. Again, I will bring Cola and Helen's scenario up as it was a load of fun during the negotiations. I don't like to back down because, again, they were my family, so I'm going to do what I have to do to get them what they needed. So without representation, it's just really hard sometimes to get what you need, truly. And that's where people like myself as a realtor and Jeremy, who is a great lender, can really kind of bridge the gap for what you're actually trying to do. At this time, that's the whole gist of the home buying process. But Jeremy and I do want to open up the floor for questions if you guys have any. So that way we can make sure that all of your questions are answered. So yeah, Jeremy, if you want to join me, we can do that part next. Yeah, sure.
All right, thank you. You get the first one. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, no, they're going to take it for questions, I guess. This is good.
Thank you so much for that, for the presentation. I have two questions, or more than two questions, but I have almost similar team question for both of you. And Jeremy, you mentioned copiously on assistance for down payment, and also you also alluded to people buying home with no down payment or with almost zero down payment and stuff like that. My question to you is, what will be the impact of that on the loan cost itself, on interest rate? Because I may have the thought that I'm getting zero down payment, but really my interest is bump up and I have PMI to pay down line, and at the end of the day it's even much more expensive. They just kind of pack it behind. So what is your thought on that?
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of putting money down. So I don't want to downplay the value in putting money down. There's a two-part answer to that question. So first off, if you put $10,000 down, it lowers a monthly payment $70 a month. So $10,000 lowers the payment $70. If you put $20,000 down, it lowers it $140 a month. So there is financial incentive, but it's not that drastic, right? Like it's not like putting $10,000 down saves you $500 a month. It's nowhere near that, right? It's $70 a month. well, you bring up the PMI, and I didn't talk too much about PMI because I do want to keep this somewhat simple, but here's what, for those of you that don't know, what PMI is in the mortgage world, when you don't put 20% down, so go back to the $100,000 example, 20% is $20,000. It's not easy to save up $20,000, right? Especially for a first-time home buyer that's paying rent and stuff like that. $20,000 is hard to come by, and $100,000 doesn't get you a lot of house. So if it's a $200,000 house, 20% is $40,000. I would rather see, so if you don't put 20% down, you have to pay this monthly PMI, and how much the PMI varies, it depends on credit, and there's a whole bunch of factors there, but the monthly cost on the PMI is $50, $60, $70 a month, something like that. So it's not a lot, but it's something. If you save up to 20%, you save that as well. Here's the thing. So if you said, hey, I'm going to wait to save up $40,000 so I can buy a $20,000 house or a $200,000 house, how long would it take you to save up $40,000? Somebody throw a time frame at me there.
4 years.
4 years? Somebody else want to throw something? Go 4? So 4 years. Let's go back to our example, right? That $200,000 house is going to go up in value $10,000 a year. So if you were looking at the house today, it would be $200,000. Fast forward 4 years, when you save up your 20% to put down, now the house is selling for $5,000 or $10,000 a year times 4 years is $240,000. So now you waited to buy for 4 years so you could save up the 20% down to avoid the PMI, but now when she goes and takes you out to see the houses, now that same house costs $240,000. So you put your $40,000 20% down on it, and you owe $200,000, you're right back to where we started. Does that make sense? And so that's why I like these government programs that are very low down payment. They allow people to get into the house today and start earning that appreciation and get out of their rental where the landlord is earning that appreciation. And I had 15 rental properties at one point, so I liked the landlord, but the reason I liked being the landlord is because I got the benefit, because the tenants were paying my mortgage and my houses were going up in value, right? Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much. And the next question to you again would be that I know people come to you and maybe if you see them and you just, I'm not going to give this person a loan. So.
Oh, I'm not that harsh. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Is that how I come off?
So what will you be looking at? I mean, is there any kind of presentation that somebody has to do for you to not say, hey, without hearing the person, I'm not giving this person a loan?
Yeah, so I'm not just going to say, no, go away. I'm going to say, well, we can't do this right now, but here's what you need to do so that you can buy. And we're going to come up with a game plan to get you ready. Maybe it's an employment income issue.Maybe it's a credit issue like we were talking about. It could be, hey, pay this credit card down $200, and then we can do a loan for you. So it's not just a hard and fast no. It's we can't do it right now. Let's come up with a game plan together. I'm advising people and helping people through the process because I want to help you get ready to buy a house.
So I'm asking the question so that we know that there's a form of discrimination when it comes to getting lenders and financing home, so that we can kind of know when our time is being wasted by a lender, so that when you're speaking to a lender and the lender is almost not going to give you a loan, what can we see that, okay, this one is just wasting my time?
Right. I would encourage, if any one of you want to buy a house, regardless of whether or not you think you can or can't, call me, because I'll be able to figure out if you can or can't, and I'll be able to give you advice so that you can down the road if you can't right now. I don't think I like talking to people as early on in the process as possible, because then we have time to fix stuff if we need to fix stuff. If your lease is up in January, we definitely should be talking now, because there may be some work for you to do. It's going to take a month or
Yeah.
two to find a house anyways, and it takes 30 days to close once you find one. So I don't think it's ever too early to talk to a mortgage person.
Thank you. Last question. I'm sorry. I took the time. Okay, so to you, you kind of touched on the question that I was going to ask, but you really didn't touch the aspect. Now, I want to buy a house, and I'm looking at my cost too. As you know, it's going to take me a long time to save 40,000, and I don't want to pay you 5% of the whole thing. So, what kind of negotiation should I be speaking in the light of the rulings that we had now, that it shouldn't be fixed now? How should I negotiate with a realtor that, hey, I'm not going to pay you 5%, but maybe I can throw in 1%, and then, or I pay you flat rate every time we talk, or you send something to me, you give me $50 or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a lot of misconception on how realtors get paid. So let's kind of break that down first. So most of the time, the seller of the home is actually the one who's paying the buyer's agent. Now, I will be very forthcoming with you and let you guys know that there is a NAR settlement. It's a whole thing that's happening nationally, where they're trying to change that, right? Where now the buyer's agent is going to fall on the buyer. But here's the thing. If you work with the right realtor, especially one that loves negotiations, that realtor is still going to negotiate to the best of their ability on your behalf, because that's their whole sole purpose, is to ensure that you're getting exactly what you need every single transaction. So if you come to me and you say, hey, listen, here's my bottom line. I cannot afford to pay you, but this is what I want. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at that and I'm going to say, okay, now I'm going to come up with a negotiation plan that allows me to have the seller pay, if I can, pay your contribution to me on your behalf through seller concessions. And we could talk for about 10, 15 minutes on seller concessions and how those normally go down. But the point of your realtor is to make sure that you're negotiated, whatever your terms need to be, they negotiate those for you. So if you're not in a position to pay for that realtor, especially if you're on the buying side of things, then that realtor can legitimately negotiate that into the offer, the agreement that you have with the seller. And or there are lovely lenders like Mr. Jeremy here, who a lot of times can get that to actually go into the loan. So there's multiple ways that we can combat how to pay the realtor. Most of the time, though, I do try to put that cost back on the seller, because in most cases, if you're selling a home and you're not offering any dollars for anyone to come through, for the most part, most buyers don't even want to see that. Because if I have to spend $10,000 extra over here just to be able to pay my realtor, I'd rather go look at the house down the street who will give my realtor the $10,000 so I don't have to, and or have your realtor negotiate with that seller to say, hey, listen, or like I said, have your lender roll it into the loan. But there's multiple options depending on what it is that you genuinely need, what your bottom line is. But a good realtor is going to listen to that, hone in on what you said, and figure out the best plan for you, whether that's negotiating with the seller or getting your lender on board to roll that financing through. But majority of the time, it's negotiated back and forth by the realtor, so that you don't even have to worry about it.
Okay, so if I'm selling my home and I'm buying second home now,
Mm-hmm.
I want to sell,
Mm-hmm.
then I can negotiate with you that I don't want to pay 5%, I will pay 2%. Will it be something that I should be looking to do now going forward?
So there's pros and cons to you as a seller not offering to pay for the buyer's commission. The way that things are set up now, in most cases, the seller does go ahead and pay for the buyer's commission. More than likely, when you bought the home you're currently residing in, the seller paid for your buyer's agent at that time. So what ends up happening if you decide, again, not to use or not to pay the buyer's agent when you're selling your home, just the nature of the beast. Some folks cannot afford that extra $10,000 it may cost them to pay their realtor. So instead of them wanting to see your home, they don't see it at all. They may love the way it looks online, But to them, if they are not able to get their realtor to negotiate the terms with you, and or if they can't get their lender to negotiate those terms into their pre-approval, then what will end up happening is they just won't see your home. So there's a lot of ways that we can kind of answer that question, because there's just so many options that we have depending on what your actual scenario is. So it's kind of hard to like legitimately answer that question, but in most cases it's negotiated, and or we talk to the lender so that we are able to roll that into the loan so people can still move forward, because the dream of everyone, for most everyone, is home ownership. So making that easier, the options have just continued to grow over the years as far as how we can combat, those costs. But yes, it is very common for sellers and buyers to negotiate the pay of their agent. So don't be afraid to say, hey, listen, I kind of want to negotiate this. Can you help me to better understand how this works? And if I don't and or do this, how will that look for me down the line? Yeah, so good question.
Can I add something to that?
Yes.
Okay. So I can't stress enough the value and importance of a realtor. Like, I've seen statistic after statistic, and I've seen it play out time and time again. If you have a house to sell, you will get more for your house if you list it with a realtor. Like, you'll get, on average, it's like 10% more. So even if you're paying the realtors 6%, if you get 10% more, it pays for itself, and then some. And the reason for that is supply and demand. So if you sell the house on your own, you put the sign in the yard and maybe 10 people see the house. When you list a house with a realtor, it goes out there on a bazillion different websites. Every realtor in town knows it's for sale. And now you have 100 buyers that want to buy your house instead of 10. And they negotiate the price up and it sells for more. Like, the value in a realtor, I know how all this works, and I would never sell a house without a realtor. Never. So for what that's worth. So
Yeah.
And did somebody give you a list of questions to ask us? Because those are really good questions. All right, good job.
You have a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have. Thank you for those answers. I have two questions. One, we do have some students that are here, so that they might be interested in doing that, but at the same time they are considering some other things, maybe their status in this place. So how will you be able to help in that situation? Or if they have a roadblock, how do you help them to clear that? What are the advice that can be provided? Then the second question, what are your take on land contract when you want to purchase a house on a land contract? What are your thoughts on that?
Ooh, so the first question, I want to make sure I legitimately understand. You're asking when someone has roadblocks in regards to purchasing a home, right? Or finding housing? Gotcha. Gotcha.
What kind of roadblocks?
So I think he's saying, like they're here on like a student visa,
Like immigration
or
type of stuff?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let me talk about that, because that's more
Yeah.
my side of it. So, the list of different immigration statuses is like this long, right? In the United States, we have a bazillion different types of immigration statuses. Most of them we can work with on the financing side. There's a couple situations where we can't, but most of the time it's okay. So student visas, work visas, like a lot of that stuff is totally fine. There's other programs out there that we can do for foreign nationals that have ITIN numbers, that don't even have social security numbers. So it really, really does depend. I don't want to give you one answer on that, because there's so many different variables there. So to answer your question, call me, tell me your specific scenario, and we'll figure it out. And it may be, hey, you got to wait until you get this, but at least you'll know, right? We don't charge anything if you call us, right? So we're here to help and answer those kind of questions, but it really is case by case. And then I'll let you answer the land contract one.
Oh yeah, land contracts are a lot of fun. So for me, what I do with folks who are looking into land contracts, I try to get them to understand the bottom line. A lot of times there's a lot of red, fine tape or fine line. And not everyone understands what they're actually getting into when they get into a land contract. So sometimes they sound like a really, really good deal until you really, really get into the nitty gritty of the fine print. So if you're looking into doing a land contract, I would 110% suggest that you have a realtor really look over that contract and make sure that you understand it through and through. Some of the hiccups I've seen over the years with folks who don't genuinely understand is one of the main things that a lot of folks who do land contracts do to protect themselves is put a clause in there that if you default, that could be one day. Default one day, life happens, refrigerator stopped working, so you fix the refrigerator so everybody can eat, right? But you defaulted on the payment. What happens is if you only owed, let's say you bought it for $100,000, but you were at this point only owed $25,000. The folks that are over the land contract have every right to knock it back to $100,000 because you defaulted. So I always tell folks, understand what you're signing, understand what you're getting into, because sometimes land contracts are not your best option. But that's a case-by-case thing, so I always say again, I implore of you to legitimately go get a realtor who can understand exactly what you're hoping to get into, because sometimes it's not your best option.
I can give you a real quick example on
Yeah.
that, on what I'm doing right now. I talked to this lady on Friday, actually, and she thought she signed a land contract. It wasn't a land contract, it was a lease with an option to buy.
Yeah.
And when she bought it, it was $100,000 even that she bought it for on this lease option, not even a land contract, but she thought it was a land contract. And she put a bunch of money into the house. The house is worth about $160,000 here 3 years later. And the seller is trying to kick her out and basically take the house back because it's worth $160,000 and sell it to somebody else. And thankfully, the lease option isn't actually up until January, and I got her going in the right direction. We're going to get it figured out for her, but you are spot on with that. You don't sign any of that stuff unless you talk to a professional about it first, for sure.
Yes. And contracts are so easy to obtain online. So folks do it all the time and they don't even know what they're having you sign. So that is the other thing is sometimes it sounds like a good deal because it's your cousin. Your cousin's like, oh man, if you just buy this. And then the other caveat to that is a lot of times folks who want to do a land contract want a hefty down payment. So sometimes they're asking you for half down. So if you're doing half down, and you have these really crazy terms, sometimes it's just better to go ahead and purchase. So that's why I say too, I really cannot hammer home enough having a realtor look over that contract to make it make sense so you know exactly what you're getting into, because that's a heck of a scenario. But it happens all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, so my question was kind of a slight deviation though. When you say land contract, like my question was in line of buying a land. Is it like a different process entirely, like buying a land and then building on it?
Not necessarily too different. So what happens again is, most of the time when you decide you want to buy land, again, you go and find a realtor first. That realtor is going to connect you again with lenders who can go ahead and help you wrap up a land purchase as well. And the same things apply. I mean, you don't have the inspections and whatnot like you would on a normal house to make sure you know exactly what you're purchasing. But there are inspections, surveys, things like that can be done so you make sure you know exactly where the property lines and that kind of a thing are. But the process isn't super, super different from buying a house. It's the same thing. You find a realtor, get your financing, and then we go start looking at land,
But the term land contract, a land contract is just a form of agreement, and that can be done on just land like dirt, or it can be done on a house. Yeah, so two different things. So construction loan new construction, buying land and building and stuff. That's what she was just talking about. His question about land contracts was it's just a legal document.
Yeah. And if you wanted a little bit more information too, as far as buying land and then building on it later, yes, people do that all the time too. And I can totally talk to you more offline if you want to go into that market, so we can kind of make sure that you have a better understanding of how that goes down. But there's plenty of builders around, or if you want to be the builder yourself, that'd be lovely too. But there's, yeah, definitely different ways that we can attack that too. And with Jeremy being as amazing as he is, if you are someone who's looking into buying some land and building on it yourself, you have a loan that will help him. Yeah. So there's programs that will help you with, purchasing the materials, getting the labor completed, stuff like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There we go. I do have a few questions, but I'll ask like three, one at a time, if you don't mind.
No worries.
The first one, because you had talked about, okay, you had talked about, okay. So you talked about the three things that you need to look at when it comes to income. So my main question here is, like, how do you know when you're ready to buy a home? I know you mentioned that you need to have your income straightened out, your credit score, and then a down payment. Are there other things that we need to have ready? Like, how does someone know when they're ready to buy a home?
I don't even think it's so much of the financial credit down payment side. I think the question of when am I ready to buy a house, I think it's more of a question as like, where am I at in life? Like, am I only going to be in Kalamazoo for another 6 months? Don't buy a house, right? Am I only going to be in Kalamazoo for another year? Don't buy a house. Like, if you're not in a spot where you want to settle down, that kind of thing. I mean, you're essentially getting married to this building in a way, right? And so I think it's more of a life question. Like, where's my family at? Where am I at? Like, and the first house I bought, I was going to college at Western, and I was single, and it was a duplex I bought, and I lived downstairs and I rented out the upstairs, and the people upstairs basically paid my mortgage payment, right? And that was right for me at that point in life, where, now I've got, kids and all that, and I wouldn't buy a house like that to live in now. But it's more of a life question. The financial side, like, everybody is always so concerned, like, am I going to qualify to answer that question? It's a simple phone call to me and my team, and we'll have it figured out in an hour. Like, and it'll be, yeah, you can buy now, or no, you need to do this. So I think, am I ready is more of a life question than a financial question. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for that. My next question, I'll kind of lump two together. Because I've recently heard, like, you shouldn't buy a house out in full or, like, pay full cash. Like, one podcast said, like, never pay full for a house, have it negotiated down. Kind of in the same thread, never, like, pay cash, right? Like, which is like paying down in full for a house. So is that true? Like, should we never buy a house in full? And also, kind of the 2-in-1, what are the hidden costs of buying a house? Because I think I've watched some shows that say, like, oh, there's HOA fees and there's, like, inspection fees, as you've mentioned, and all these other things that a new home buyer might not be aware of. So how can we navigate that?
Yeah. So how I would best navigate that question is,
Can I answer the cash part?
yes, go ahead.
If you got the cash to pay cash for the house, pay cash for the house. All right? Like,
Yeah.
don't listen to TikTok.
Yeah, right. A house is an investment. Just like Jeremy was explaining to you guys earlier too, you can be in this house today, you paid $100,000 for it today, but in a few years, it's worth so much more than that, right? So if you've paid cash for it today, if you have the ability, like he is saying, totally do that, because now you don't have any interest, you don't have any PMI. So a lot of your hidden costs go away, when you do pay it off. So if you have the ability, I second Jeremy, please pay it off. That's one less bill, no interest. Yeah, I'm like,
that's why I said you want me to answer that.
I was like, I don't really want to say.
But
pay it
would I
off.
wait 20 years to save up the cash to buy? No, because of the example I gave earlier, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And then I feel like there was a second part to your question. Can you ask that one more time? I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
the hidden costs and
All the hidden
fees and
costs.
things.
Right. Now, I will say this, and I don't want this to come across any kind of a way, but anytime you buy anything, there's more to it, right? You buy a car, they try to get you to buy a home warranty or the car warranty. There's car insurance. There's all these things. So I think sometimes when we look at a home, it's such a big purchase, so you get really, really scared, and all these fees sound like it's a lot, and someone's taking you to the cleaners. But realistically, you have costs when it's associated with everything. You buy shoes from the mall, there's more cost than you actually just paying for those shoes. You know what I mean? You're paying taxes. There's so much cost into everything. So I don't want you to hear the costs that can be associated with a home buying process and get scared away from that. Because again, like we talked about earlier too, some of those costs we can negotiate down. Some of those costs we can roll into the loan. Some of the cost of buying a home just isn't that scary if you know what your options are. So don't be afraid to ask a realtor, ask a lender exactly what all your options are so that you understand them all. Because it's not as scary as it sounds when you know what all your options are.
Let me add one piece to that.
Yeah,
okay? All right,
absolutely.
So, do you know why there's all the government loan programs out there?
To help with home buying.
To help people?
Yeah.
It's because housing is such a big part of our economy. So think about it. When you buy a house, and this gets into the cost, right? So when you buy a house, there's lender fees, there's title company, there's appraisal, there's a home inspector, there's the list go, insurance, property taxes. There's so much money that exchanges hands. And that fuels our economy, right? And then the first thing somebody does after they buy the house, they don't even go to the house. They go to Home Depot, Menards, Lowe's, and they spend more money because they buy curtains and appliances, and all those companies and people make money. So housing is like a huge part of our GDP. It's a huge part of our economy. That's why all the government loan programs. It's because it helps fuel our economy. So yes, there are a ton of costs when you buy a house, and we'll go through numbers when you meet with me, and she'll run you through numbers and stuff. At the end of the day, though, I can't tell you how many times somebody purchased a home with very, very little out of pocket. Like you can get away with a home inspection that's like $300, and then if we're doing that MISHTA program and it's $1,000 down, and that's it. So most of the everything else we can get worked into the deal most of the time. You agree with that?
Absolutely. And a good realtor is going to negotiate everything that you're not comfortable paying, as long as your loan type, because there are some loan types where you can't ask for all of it from the seller.
But we walked through all that initially.
Absolutely.
Before you ever go look at a house. We're figuring that stuff out.
Yeah. So you'll know what's what before you get into it.
Last question. Because you talked about people who already own their homes as well. Once someone acquires a house, how can they expect to add equity? I guess you said the houses kind of increase every year by a certain percentage. Is there anything that the homeowner can do as well? I know some people will do renovations if it's an older house, but
That's all you.
Yes, indeed. So I will say this: I do caution folks from going crazy or doing the crazy trends and whatnot. If you ever have questions about your home value, there's something called the appraisal, which we hit on a little bit earlier. You can always have it appraised. But what I will say, it is very, very, very common for folks to feel like they need to renovate to be able to keep their value or get the value to go up. Sometimes that is not the case. And that is a case-by-case scenario. And I normally tell folks, especially if you're looking to buy or you just want to know what your home value is, you can always have a realtor pull comps and do a market analysis, which is free, to tell you exactly what they think your home is worth as is before you do a bunch of renovations, because not all renovations will equate to what you want it to be. Sometimes a kitchen renovation, even if you spend $25,000 on it, may only equate to your home value going up by 10 grand. So you have to be careful with how much money you put into something. And so that's when I say legitimately, if you're trying to hit the mark, you want your house to be a certain value, I would bring in an expert who can tell you, okay, I would do this with your kitchen, but don't put a swimming pool in the backyard, or don't do this or don't do that. You know what I mean? Because every neighborhood is a little bit different from the one next to it. So in this neighborhood, if you put a swimming pool in the backyard, it may increase the value. In a different neighborhood, that same swimming pool may actually bring the value of that home down. So, and it's hard to tell that when you're just looking at TikTok and, they're doing this to their kitchen. And not everybody should have a black kitchen. No, everyone should not have a black kitchen. So, legitimately, before you do a bunch of renovations in the hope to add value to your home, consult a realtor. There's no fee for that. We'll literally come in, tell you what is what's trending, and what will actually stick in the market for where you're currently residing. Because one neighborhood is not the same as the very next one to it. So, yes.
So first of all, I want to thank you guys for this wonderful session. I probably should have asked earlier, but when you were talking earlier, you said something about realtors can help increase the value of a property. So in a situation where they are helping you increasing it by X amount, and then during the appraisal process is less than that, so which takes precedence in that situation?
So, can I answer? So if an appraisal comes back and it's a little bit lower, most of the time your realtor is going to get down and dirty with the appraiser. And I say that in the nicest way possible. Most of the time, if we disagree on the price of a home, if I have priced it, most of the time I've used multiple different avenues to get me to that price. So I didn't just wake up and say, oh, I think his house is worth $500,000 and I'm going to stick with that. No, I've done all the work, the due diligence to realize that your house is comparable to that price. So that price should stay. If the appraiser does not agree, then what will normally happen is there's reports that I can rerun and do and provide for that or the appraiser so that we can have a educated conversation on why we both believe that the price is what it is. Most of the time we meet in the middle somewhere. So in the event that let me ask this, are you worried about that from a buyer or a seller standpoint?
Or from a seller standpoint, I guess.
As a seller, if your appraisal comes back a little bit low, there are things that we would do in that instance. If I was your listing agent and you're the seller, I would go ahead and make sure that everything that they're questioning, we check the boxes off. If the appraiser is saying, the roof is so old, that's the reason why, or I will still pull comps that will still provide the value that we're looking for in that neighborhood. And again, it's not always definitive. Yes, I can get the appraiser to agree to that price point, but in most cases, what we'll do is we'll talk it out between the two of us and look at those reports and try to come to a middle ground. Most cases, appraisers will work with folks, but it's not always very, very often that the appraisal comes in super, super low. If your appraisal is that far off, more than likely the pricing was really off in the beginning. And that's a conversation for you and your realtor at that point. If the pricing is too overpriced, any appraiser is going to look at that and say, you know what, there's no point in the bank paying this dollar amount just because there's a personal sentiment on the home for the seller. Because that's what ends up happening a lot of times is folks have lived in a home for so long, they love it, they absolutely love it, so of course they want $100,000 extra, but it's not actually worth $100,000 extra. So in that instance, I would make sure that the price is what is a good price for that actual home. And if it is, then I would work with the appraiser to make sure that we can meet at a common ground, figure out why he or she believes what they believe, and we talk that out.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I do have some more questions.
Absolutely.
So, pardon me. I was looking at the interest rate. It's about 7.114%. I know there's a thing like points where you can buy down your interest rate. Is it something that you advise people to like do with the high interest rates we have right now?
It's really a case-by-case answer. So when I meet with somebody, the first couple questions I'm asking are, where do you want to live? What do you want your payment to be? What are you comfortable with? Because it doesn't matter if I can approve you for a $2,000 payment if you only want to spend $1,000 a month. What price range do you want to be in? How much money do you have to work with for down payment? How long are you going to live in the house for? And all of those things play into the answer to your question. In the market we're in right now, I think that a lot of the forecasts, that I see predict rates coming down a little bit over the next year or so. And because of that, in a lot of cases, I'm not advising people to buy points or pay points like you're asking. Let me clarify on what a point is so that you guys understand what he asked me. So what a point is you're prepaying interest for a lower rate over the life of the loan. So as a very, very simple example, let's say today's interest rate's 7% and you're buying a $100,000 house. 1 point is 1% of the loan amount. So if the loan's for $100,000, you're paying $1,000 to lower that rate down from say 7% to 6.75%. And there will be some monthly savings in exchange for that. And I always run a break even for people when we look at doing points. And let's just say that I got to do these numbers in my head. So let's say that's saving, let's say it's saving $100 a month. So $1,000 divided by $100 would be a break even of 10 months. That's really, really quick. I would advise you to buy a point in that example because as long as you have that mortgage for 10 months, you've then made the $1,000 back and then you're saving $100 a month after that. Most of the time when I run that break-even analysis for somebody, it's anywhere from 5 to 8 years. And most people aren't going to live in a house for 8 years. They're statistically going to live there for 6 years. And in this interest rate environment we're in right now, because it's forecasted for rates to come down lower, and you'll probably refinance the loan before you hit that break-even period. So there are certainly circumstances where it makes sense to buy points, but right now in the current environment, most of the time it does not. Does that make sense? That's a complicated question. Yeah.
If it helps any too, most realtors, most of my friends, all of us, for the most part, are pretty much telling folks, date the rate, marry the house. Because if you wait for the rates to go down to buy the perfect house, you might be, or if you're waiting for the rates to go down to a perfect number you have envisioned in your mind, you may be waiting for a very long time. So with what Jeremy was saying, refinance is not such a bad thing. I think there's been some misconceptions and myths about that too. But if it's one of those things where your dream house is on the market, don't be afraid of that rate for just a little bit. So that's what I mean by date the rate, marry the house. Get the house of your dreams, yes. As long as you can financially afford it and you're still comfortable with that payment in the meantime, but you can always refinance a few months down the line.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Also, when Elizabeth was asking a question, you guys kind of touched on like appraisals. And to run like an appraisal, you said you can find the cheapest of like 300. That's like still a significant amount of money, right? So for a situation where you say, for example, I want to know the value of my house, like keeping track with it, right? There are like different platforms. You would see, okay, this house is worth X amount. On another platform, you're seeing is X plus 50 grand, right? So there are like different platforms. Like if I wanted to go the cheap option rather than getting someone to come evaluate it for me to know what my house is currently worth, like which of these service providers would you be recommending?
So I always tell folks, the consultation is free. So do not be afraid. If you have a realtor who's saying it's going to cost you $150 for them to pull the reports to tell you that, run run, run. Okay, call me. That consultation is free. I will pull all the comps for you. I will let you know what my systems are saying your house is worth. I will also pull houses that are very, very similar to yours that have sold preferably in the last 6 months or less, so that I can get a really good comparison dollar amount number for you. As far as the inspections and appraisals and things like that, yes, there are a lot of costs associated with that, but a lot of times, again, that stuff can be rolled into the loan, or the seller, we can negotiate that the seller pays some of those costs if that's a big deal, make or break for you guys. But in this scenario, the majority of the time, I just tell folks, don't be afraid of a consultation. If you legitimately have questions about where you are in your house, how much it's worth, all those things, call a real estate agent who you know is going to give you good advice, pull the reports, and do the comps for free. Because most agents will do that whole consultation for you for free with no expectancy. They're hopeful that you're going to let them sell it, but there's no expectancy for you to have that person do anything else beyond just giving you those comparables. If you would like, you can also, my information is on the bottom of those sheets. Text me what your address is, and I'll do this comparable for you and have it back to you in a couple days, free of charge.
So Realtor's free. The websites that you see out there, the other platforms, are not accurate. Don't pay any attention to those. Call the realtor. The appraisal side is something that you do when you go through the loan process, and we don't charge anything up front for that. So there's no out-of-pocket cost for the appraisal once you're under contract and we're working the loan.
Yeah.
So call the realtor. The answer to your question is call the realtor.
Yeah. And just to touch back just very, very quickly on all those different systems saying something different. The reason they're doing that is they're estimating what they think your house could be worth. You also have to understand is they can't physically see the inside of it. So if you have remodeled the kitchen or you did add a pool to the backyard, Zillow has no idea you did that. So they may be saying that your house is worth 125 when really it's worth 225 because now you've done, upgrades, or maybe they're just not as familiar with that neighborhood. There are some websites that I don't know where they get the numbers from, but they can be really, really off, and they are often. I will name no names, but I will say most folks are looking at those sites. So it is always best to consult a realtor who's actually pulled the comps and done the work for you.
Thank you so much. I get it back, but my question is very brief. I have two questions because of the question that she asked on the financing, on buying the home cash. Then I want to pick from that because I see both of you agree that if you have the money now, pay now. So if I want to buy a home, will you now recommend that I should do 15 years rather than going for 30 years? Because if you say buy now, why should I wait 30 years? Maybe the shorter the loan, the better it will be. That's the first question.
So what term of loan to get?
Yes.
15. So typically we're doing 30-year loans is the norm. So that just so everybody understands. So when you take out a mortgage, most of the time you'll pay it back over a period of 30 years. Now most people don't live there for 30 years. Again, they sell the house and move up and stuff. I'm a huge fan of the 15-year loan, so you can pay it back over a shorter period of time. I think it's all about your budget. Can you afford those higher payments? But another way people will do it is they'll do the 30-year loan, but then they'll pay extra on it each month, and that'll save you on that interest and save have that same savings. But if it's within your budget and you're comfortable with it, then I would absolutely do a 15 over a 30-year. Because I'm a big fan of paying them off. Like, the sooner you can get it paid off, the better.
Thank you so much. That is very illuminating. The last question from me will also go back to you on foreclosed home, where you said that you will get a bill of contract from a contractor. Yep. If you go to a standard contractor, they will bill you for gas and stuff like that. So their bill will be very expensive. But I know not a standard contractor that I want to use. Can I get quote from that non-standard contractor, and can you still put into that?
That's a good question. So if we're financing the renovation into the mortgage, because we have to abide by so many rules and regulations and stuff, we have to deal with a licensed contractor. I do know some licensed contractors that would probably work with your, let's call it handyman or whoever is going to help you with the project, and maybe charge a small fee to kind of oversee the project on the contractor's end, but let your person do the work. So again, we can talk through that scenario more specifically for whatever exactly you're talking about, but there's some workarounds for it, I guess is my point. But to answer, if I was being recorded on the internet right now, I would tell you that it's got to be a licensed contractor. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. So the question is from someone online. Condos versus houses, pros and cons, basically. That's the question.
Ooh, so I think this goes kind of back to what the lovely young lady in pink asked earlier, those hidden costs, fees, HOA fees. A lot of times your condos are just as nice as any house out here, right? So those condos, whether it looks like a high-rise apartment type building condo, or it's a community of what looks like townhomes knocked together, or whether it's like standalone houses. Sometimes it just depends on that condo association, because all of them are different. Sometimes they have a lot of fees. Sometimes when you buy a condo, that condo itself, because they are the ones who enact whatever rules they have. So a lot of them have like buy-in fees. So if you buy this house, you got to pay, X amount of dollars, which normally is a few thousand, just to get in and get your offer approved, because you buying the house is not enough. You have to satisfy the HOA and the condo association, but that's not always the case. A lot of condos do have buy-in fees. A lot of them have monthly associated fees. A lot of them have rules. So if you wanted to, be the cool trending house on the neighborhood, because black is really trendy right now, if you painted your house black, you might get kicked out of the association. So there's a lot of cool perks to condos, though, in the sense that a lot of them have, swimming pools on the property. A lot of them have, all these amenities that we might not be able to afford otherwise on our own. So I would encourage you not to be afraid of condos. If you are interested in purchasing a condo, make sure that your agent does the due diligence of showing you exactly what the pros and cons are for that legitimate property. Because what may be a con for you may not be a con for the next person, but understanding what you're buying and what you're interested in would be the first step, is making sure that whatever fees, whatever is associated, because not all of them have those fees, but a lot of them do, figuring out what actual condo you want to be in and what those rules are for that association is paramount. So I'd say start there. Start with a realtor who can do all that legwork for you, so you know exactly what you're buying and you're comfortable with the rules of that association.
First, thank you so much for your presentation. My question kind of relates to the question Elizabeth had asked earlier about credit in general. So, assuming I have $600,000 in my account, I do not, but let's just assume I do. Yet, right. And I find a house, and the price is at like 500 grand. So, does it make financial sense for me to pay out of pocket for that house in full? And how much should we consider the opportunity cost of buying that house in making that decision? And if we do not consider it something to do, like paying in full, at what point should you cut it off? Where would you say is a good place for you to cut off in your down payments?
For me, I'd really have to know all the variables. I mean, there's so much more to your question. Let me ask you some more questions. Do you have any other retirement savings? What's your income? How long are you going to own it for? There's so much more to that to give accurate advice on that.
Yeah, let's say that's my expendable income. Everything else is kind of taken care of. I can survive but like that's the amount that I have that I'm willing to use for investment purposes.
But you have other savings?
Perhaps, yes.
Again, I'm a huge fan of paying cash, so
Yeah.
like I'm never going to steer somebody away from paying cash. I would say pay cash, but like if that was all the money you had, right, and you were going to be left with only with $100,000 and you didn't have a big income, I'd probably tell you don't spend $500,000 on a house. Go buy a $300,000 house, keep $300 in the bank.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just so specific of a the
Right.
answer to that question is there's so much more I'd want to talk through to really accurately answer it. But I wouldn't want somebody to drain all of their money out, have nothing left, and then have the fridge go out and they don't have the money. They got to go put the fridge on a credit card. Kind
Right.
Of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just because we've learned over time that the right amount of credit is good and better than just write out like paying cash out front, because then you can use the money for something else. Like you can use it to invest in something else or like do something else where it really works for you. So I'm just curious to know like what your
Yeah, I mean, like if you got a good, a decent disposable income, maybe you take out $100,000 loan and you put $400 down or something like that too. Like, I'd want to talk through that. I'd want to get that person's all their information, and then I'd want to have a one-on-one conversation with them.
I can tell you that it is very common for people to pay whatever they're comfortable with paying towards buying the house. So I've had folks who have literally paid half of it in cash and financed the rest. The least amount that you're financing, you got to consider the fact that that's the amount of less interest that you're going to be paying over time too. A lot of people, when they get the amortization schedule, when they close, it kind of freaks them out because they're like, oh my gosh, if I make the payments, this is how much interest I'm actually paying over time. So if you're able to put a good chunk of that down and not have so much, interest in PMI and all the things, then it could be good for you. But like Jeremy said, I am one too who's a huge advocate for not being house poor. It's cool to have what you see on the TikTok, but not if it, but not if it is robbing you of all of your joy. You can't sleep at night. You're trying to work 3 jobs just to maintain. Nobody wants that story. So definitely, this is when I would again encourage you to talk to a realtor, talk to a lender who can help you figure out what you're actually really comfortable with paying. Because a lot of times we don't know what we don't know. So sometimes after that conversation, you realize what you're actually comfortable with. Yeah.
Okay, I have 2 questions. I've been waiting for a while. Sorry. My first question would be, what would be your advice for a first-time buyer who is looking at rent-to-own options? Like, what's your advice in regards to that? Is there financing for things like that and all of that? And then my second question was, with the government-backed programs, are there like income limits? Like, say, for you to qualify for this, you can't make more than this amount. So.
Okay, so to go back to the rent to own, that's kind of another way of saying land contracts. It's kind of the same thing. They fall into that category. I don't discourage people from going into it, but what I will say is again and again and again, make sure you understand exactly what you're getting into. Most folks who get into a rent to own, a land contract, lease to purchase, they don't actually understand what they're signing, what they're getting into. And when the nitty gritty happens, they default on that payment or they're trying to purchase the house outright. It's not as easy as they thought because they didn't have a clear understanding of what they were getting themselves into. So first and foremost, I legitimately would want you to have that contract looked at by a professional who understands the red tape and can explain it to you in a way that has you feeling comfortable about moving forward. If you're not comfortable moving forward, then I'm going to suggest, looking at a different option. Yeah. And then your second question.
The government programs.
Oh.
I'll get that one.
Yeah, I was gonna say I feel like
I want to add something though to the rent-to-own answer too. I love what you said there. I think also like if somebody's doing a lease option or a rent-to-own kind of thing, there's a reason why. Like, they didn't qualify for a mortgage, right? And that lease option is going to have some kind of time frame where that seller has to get their money. So, one, yes, you should have the thing looked at for sure, but you should also be talking to somebody and have a game plan and an absolute game plan in place to get that contract cashed out at whatever time frame is set on it. It's like that one I gave you guys the example on that I saw right now. It's up in January, and if she doesn't get her cashed out, like, the seller's gonna profit, not the buyer. And you got to have a game plan too. To answer your question on the government programs, there are some income limits on some of the programs. There depends on the program and which one we're talking about. Most of the government programs do not have income limits. The one with the state of Michigan does have them. They vary by area and family size, and they're around here over $100,000. You know, it's like, and it depends how many people you have. It's like 100, and don't quote me on this, 146,000 for like a family of 3 or more in Kalamazoo County. So it's, yes, there's income limits, but it's pretty darn lenient.
So don't be afraid to reach out, friend. That's what
Just
we're
call.
telling you.
Okay, thank you. I have two questions. One of the question he has asked about rent to own. So that one is crossed out. So the second question is a scenario base. Let's say I have someone in Canada. He want to buy a home here for an investment. And he's not an American citizen, but he lives in Canada. So what's the process like? Is it that she's going to buy, put down payment, then get the rest of it to be financed? What's the process like?
It's really the same process. I mean, so that's where we get into like those foreign national loans I mentioned earlier and stuff like that. It's doable. There's more the program, the down payment assistance program through the state of Michigan isn't going to work in a scenario like that, right? We're going to have to go to one of these other programs that's going to probably require a little bit more down payment and stuff like that, but it's doable. It's the same process. They just need to call, give us their info, and then we figure it out.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for those wonderful answers. We have a land at the back there, right? And as a church, if we want to build something, because I can see you have some various type of loans here. So is it the place of the government, the city to look at it? Or we can come to the lender and say, hey, this is the plan that we have, that we want to build something there. How does that process work?
So from my end, I'm really a residential lender. So I'm 1 to 4 family, 1 to 4 units. Like, so if it was like the church that was going to borrow the money or something like that, that's commercial money, and that's just not my realm of expertise. I can't accurately answer that. I mean, there's definitely commercial lenders out there, but like what exactly it takes to make something like that happen, I know I've seen churches do deals before, and a lot of the churches kind of can go to other churches within the denominations and stuff and like access money that way. But as far as like, is that something I could help with? No. So, yep, good question. Oh, you're out of question. You are done.
Last question. So I just remember now, equity line of credit.
Yep.
The people would take HOLC, HELOC on their house to go and buy another house to go and rent. And they were saying that is a good idea or something like that. What's your take on that?
It's definitely done. I've done loans like that for people. Most of the time, a home equity line is going to be an adjustable rate mortgage. I'm not a huge fan of adjustable rate mortgages. I've been doing, you guys saw when they were reading off the menu of my history or whatever. Like, I've been doing it a long time, right? And that's back in like when you hear people talk about 2008 and when the market crashed back then and stuff, some of that had to do with all the adjustable rate mortgages that were out there, and those rates started to adjust up on people, and then they couldn't afford it. And so I think a home equity line has its place. In our area, you know, if somebody's trying to access 10, 20 grand, something like that, a smaller amount of money, yeah, do a home equity line. I think something like that's fine, because if the interest rate adjusts up on a $10,000 loan, if the rate adjusts up from 6% to 10%, it's not that big of a deal. If you're talking about taking out a $200,000 home equity line of credit on an adjustable rate mortgage, I wouldn't do it, because if that adjusts, those home equity lines all have caps built into them, and like as far as how those rates adjust, so they'll have some nice teaser rate at 4%, but there will be a 6% cap on it. And I've had people in my office in tears because their payment adjust, not on a loan I did, but on they took out a home equity line with their bank or something, and then the rate went from 4 to 12%. They can't afford it anymore, and they either got to call and sell the house, or figure something else out. And so I'm not a big fan of them. In that case, I would say let's just do a home equity line to get 20% down, and then let's do a mortgage on the investment property that person's buying. The mortgage that I would do on the investment property would be a fixed rate mortgage and then the down payment comes from the equity line. So you're putting a little bit on the adjustable rate and most of it on a mortgage on that house. Does that make sense? Okay.
I'm asking because you talked about commercial and residential kind of funding. Imagine that somebody has a piece of land and they want to build homes to rent on that piece of land. Is that still residential, or now that becomes commercial?
It would still be commercial because it's an investor. So, and we can do loans for investors on existing homes, but when you talk about building a rental property, so to speak, you'd get back into the commercial money. And part of the reason I answered his question the way I did too is, who's taking out the loan? Is it an individual, or like is it the church or a business or something, right? And so if a church or the business is taking out the loan, then it's commercial for sure. So, but if a private investor wanted to, you know, buy an investment property that's already there or renovate it, we could help with something like that. But like new construction is a little bit different animal for investors.
So we have 2 questions. The first one is, how do you make a decision to continue with the offer or pull out after inspection is completed? And then the second one is like, how should you go about negotiating, and what are the best practices based on inspection report?
Lovely. So this is where a good agent is going to really come into play. Once you have an inspection report, and let's say it is really, really bad, right? All the things that could go wrong went wrong with this inspection. If that is the case, there are things in the contracts that we write up that would allow you to back out of an offer. So if the house is that bad and you do not want to move forward, I can clearly write an addendum that would stop everything. It would cease right then and there, as long as we're still within that 10-day inspection period. So there's some caveats to that, but that's on the realtor side. As long as you're still in that window, you can go ahead and get out of whatever deal you're in if those inspections are too bad. If the inspections are one where you would rather negotiate, we can do that too. And that's what happens the majority of the time. Most people see the inspection and don't actually walk away. Most of the time we renegotiate the terms where you actually pay less for the house, and or the seller pays or fixes some things. That's what's most common.
Just following up on his question, I'm trying to recall what it's called, but there's like usually this initial payment.
Earnest money deposit?
Yeah, earnest money deposit. Right, so in that kind of situation, can you still get that deposit back? Like,
yes. So scenario by scenario, case by case, most of the time, as long as you have terminated within that 10-day inspection period, the EMD is not questionable, you would get it back. Where the EMD starts, or the earnest money deposit, excuse me, where the earnest money deposit starts becoming questionable is if you've waited past that inspection period. If you woke up on day 25 and said, you know what, I want to move to Puerto Rico instead of Portage, we got a problem. If you've gotten that far into the home buying process, the EMD is 100% probably going to stay with the seller. There have been some instances in the past where it has gone outside of that 10-day window, and the seller and the buyer were able to agree on that EMD, and we either split it or the buyer still got it back. But in most cases, there are so many ways that you can still get out of a deal if you're uncomfortable, especially within those first 10 days of that offer being accepted. But having a good agent as well is paramount in this, and I will keep saying that until the cows come home, because a good agent is going to make sure that you understand where you are in that transaction at all times. So if it is day number 8 and we have not talked to the other side about how you feel about those inspections, and we don't renegotiate, then I as an agent would be doing you a disservice. So in this instance, I'm going to say check in with your realtor if your realtor's not checking in with you to see exactly where you are, because in most cases you can get your money back. It just you have to do it in a certain time frame. All righty.
Wow, thank you so much. This is a wonderful section, and I believe everyone, both people listening online and people here, got tons of information that could help them to make a good decision. So I want to say thank you for coming and asking all the questions. So thank you one more time.
Absolutely. We really appreciate you guys for having us out. If you do have any further questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to reach out. We want to make sure that you guys are comfortable doing whatever it is that your real estate dreams, are. We want to make sure that you guys get those to come to fruition. So call us.
All right. Thank you.
Did everybody get a handout?
So, sorry. So, at this point in time, we're going to bring everything to a close. We're supposed to close by 8 p.m., but because this is so interesting and it's very hot, so it's already 8:43. We spend 43 minutes more. That's to tell you how interesting it is. Yeah. So, we want to thank our guests again. So, Kabrena Williams and Jeremy Drobeck. And anytime you want to do anything, we'll still invite you over again. Yeah. So if you have any question, you want to make some decision, please reach out to them. Their information is on the packet given to you. You can always reach out to them to answer all your questions. Maybe you want to buy a home for yourself or for an investment, just reach out to them. They'll give you all the answer. They will work with you seamlessly. Thank you, everyone. At this point, I'm going to call the pastor, Pastor Ademola Adeniji. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. Because I used to be a lender, so I kind of know. So I don't want to interrupt. I was enjoying you. So some things and I learned some other things alongside too. Thank you. You are a loaded person, and I appreciate, So I was enjoying it, so I can testify to some few things that you said, so thank you. Thank you so much. So can we just rise up and just appreciate God for this wonderful time, for everything that occurred here tonight. We appreciate you. We thank you, Lord, for the understanding. We thank you for the wisdom that has been shared. We appreciate you, Lord, for the direction. We give you all the glory for our men, what you have put into their heart to be able to do these things to equip our people so that we can make a better decision. Daddy, we appreciate you, Lord. We bless your holy name. We give you all the glory. Be that exalted in the name of Jesus. Lord, as we are even going to be making some decision in purchasing a house, expanding on one way or the other, Lord, we pray that the Lord direct our path in the name of Jesus. Thank you, everlasting Father. We commit tomorrow, which is the grand finale of this men's group. Oh Lord, we pray that the Lord take absolute control and let your name be glorified. Thank you, our everlasting Father, for in Jesus' mighty name we have prayed. Can we share the grace? May the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the sweet fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us now and forevermore. Amen. Surely, God's goodness and mercy shall follow us all the days of our lives, and we shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever and ever. Amen. Praise the Lord. Yeah, thank you, everyone. God bless you, and let's celebrate our guests one more time. God bless you.